Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's ResNexus webinar. This is one we're really excited about because this is our webinar for our integration with PriceLabs, which has been one of our by far most requested integrations. So we're very pleased to have that for you, and we're pleased as well to have David Veers, solution consultant at PriceLabs. He's going to present for us all. And he's going to go over PriceLabs. He's going to give us a presentation and then kind of a demo. So I think that'll be great and valuable. I've also got Amy Mayfield. She's our support director at ResNexus, and she's here to help field questions, especially towards the end when we'll have our Q&A. So if you do have any questions about anything, you can go ahead and put those into the Q&A, either now or at the end, and we'll get to those questions towards the end of the presentation. But with that all being said, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to David. Hey, David, thanks so much for coming on and putting on this presentation for us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Gavin. We're really excited about this integration as well, this partnership. So I'll just kind of jump into it. And like Gavin said, we've got the Q&A going. So if you have any questions, add those there. We might answer some live, or we'll get to them at the end as well. But a little bit about me. I've been a solutions consultant here at Price Labs for about 2.5 years. And I started in the STR industry back in 2019. So a little bit of history in the industry, but certainly enjoy it. Enjoy working with people. My particular role, I work with folks that have um, what I'll call like at least 50 rentable units or more. That's just my particular team's role. I know with ResNexus, there's a wide range of accommodations that you all offer, from kind of traditional short-term rental Airbnb kind of stuff, and to glamping and boutique hotels, bed and breakfasts, camping sites, and everywhere in between. So, you might hear me say like listing or unit or those things. I'm talking about like a rentable unit that you can charge a nightly rate for. So if I kind of slip some of those terms in there, that's what I'm referring to. And then today we're just going to kind of cover dynamic pricing, revenue management basics, some key metrics to track. Like Gavin said, I plan on just spending a little bit of time here with the slides just for some foundational knowledge, and then we'll jump into the software and just kind of provide a demo of how you could use PriceLabs, or at least get an idea of what's capable with PriceLabs and see if you want to start your free trial with it. Um, yeah, let's keep going here. I did see a question come through. We'll probably answer that one later. Dynamic pricing and revenue management. So just a kind of quick, who's Price Labs? About Price Labs, we were founded back in 2014. We do revenue management and dynamic pricing solutions for a wide range of accommodation offerings. I think that's why our partnership with ResNexus works so well, is you can customize the tool to your specific strategy. We do price over 400,000 properties, or again, rentable units daily. We're pretty much worldwide, um, multiple languages as far as if you need support. And then our people, our headquarters is in Chicago. We do all work remotely though. So for example, I'm based in Utah, um, pretty close to the ResNexus headquarters actually. But we have team members spread throughout the world. And our support team is also spread throughout the world. So if you reach out to our support team, we're a 24/7 support team. You'll get a response. Um, and yeah, I mean you can see some of our industry recognitions and things, but as far as what Price Labs offers, we have four main tools or products. What we're most known for, and what most people think of when they think of Price Labs, is the dynamic pricing, that revenue management, where we're basically maximizing your revenue, taking your human control inputs into it, but also using the best-in-class automation and market data and customizability to mostly automate your revenue management strategy. We also have portfolio analytics, which is reporting, and it's easy to interpret charts and graphs about your portfolio's performance, maybe compared to how you did last year or how you're pacing compared to yourself last year. Looking at this state, looking forward, are we ahead on occupancy? Are we behind? Those sort of things. So you can analyze your own portfolio and then make pricing decisions based on that. We also have market dashboards, which is more of a market research thing where you can search any kind of area in the world that at least has some comps. For market dashboards specifically, that data comes from Airbnb or Verbo. And you can, again, you'll search like a geographic region, and then we pull in all the data from Airbnb or Verbo for those, and you can get some market analysis done as well. And then Revenue Estimator Pro is, I guess, our newest tool on here. This is one where maybe you want to get an idea of what you might be able to make or earn of like a potential property or something. You can type in an address and it'll pull in the nearby comps. It's usually somewhere between 300 to 400 or 500 nearby units, and it'll give you kind of quick at a glance potential revenue information. You can fine tune that, filter out properties with pools or different things like that. So those are the main tools. Today we're probably going to talk mostly about dynamic pricing and portfolio analytics. But we do have, other webinars or things you can check out on PriceLab's website for the other tools if you're interested in those. Okay. Um, as far as okay, there was one question. We'll get into yield management. Alright, sorry. Okay, I see. And then yes, we are recording this. I think we might not have said that in the beginning, and I'm assuming we'll share it later on, Gavin, when it's generated. If you want to just confirm that.
Yeah, that's right. We'll go ahead and make sure that's available for everybody within the week. So yeah, no worries on that front.
Okay,
Um, yeah.
sounds good. Thanks. Um, cool. So just real quickly, obviously there are many elements and factors that go into like a revenue management strategy. These are just three of the key elements that we put in here to kind of focus on as far as for today's presentation goes. We'll jump into dynamic pricing, portfolio analytics, and we'll pull in some market data as well as when we get into the tool here in a minute. But right, like it's pricing is a big important thing, but it's also your, I guess, bookability of your properties, of your, the quality, all those different things are going to have an impact on your performance, right? Since this is I guess, a Price Labs and ResNexus webinar, we'll talk about those things that we can control from Price Labs, which is your pricing, and then just kind of seeing how you're comparing to the market and making tweaks to your pricing strategy. Why dynamic pricing? And I'm not sure exactly what strategies y'all are using right now, but maybe you're just kind of setting rates. Maybe I know a lot of folks will have like their annual pricing meeting and they'll kind of set all their rates that they anticipate for the upcoming year. Um, right? With dynamic pricing, we're also taking input in from the market. So we can see if you know, a good example is Easter last year was in March, right? This year it's in April. So there's going to be differences year to year, where maybe you forgot that in your planning meeting as you were planning your rates back in November for the upcoming year or whatever. So just different things like that noticing demand signals from the market will help you with your strategy. Also want to try to help you automate some of it, so eliminating some of those manual efforts, saving you some time, and then just making it easier to kind of see all the data in aggregate. Um, and then as far as, sometimes people will ask, well, how does the connection work? Well, Price Labs will send over like the nightly rate information, basically all this stuff that happens in Price Labs will be sent over into ResNexus. We do an automated sync once every night. You can do a manual sync. So a sync is just saying, what I've got set in Price Labs, I want to push over into ResNexus. So it'll send that to ResNexus, and then ResNexus will just send it to your different channels. So your direct booking website, your Airbnb if you're listed on there, all those different channels. Okay. Um, what we get kind of on the way back is just reservation data. So ResNexus will send us if a unit got booked, how much it got booked for. So then we can kind of present to you this is your average daily rate for that booking, and those sort of things. Okay. Um, so now I'm gonna jump into our software and just kind of give you a quick rundown of it real quick. And again, I'm there's a lot of possibilities in PriceLabs. I'm just going to be covering high level things, getting your wheels turning on capabilities. PriceLabs, we have daily onboarding, live onboarding options. If you've started a free trial and you see like this button here at the top to schedule an onboarding, you can schedule an onboarding. If you need to reach out to our support team for any reason, or you want to read like help articles, some people like to self onboard. You can click this little question mark and it'll give you some options, but you can learn how to use PriceLabs, right? You can search help articles, you can chat into our support team right from here. I guess we got a running list of our latest updates that you can see as well. Anyway, so those are just kind of helpful things to know about here on when you're first logging in. If you're first connecting with PriceLabs, you'll have to connect to your ResNexus account, right, to be able to pull in the unit and listing information. So when you first log in, it might not look like this. There'll be like a red button or something that says add or listings, and I'll kind of show you here. It'll give you this option where you can search your PMS, so ResNexus in this case. And then if you click on this, how to connect to ResNexus, it'll pull up our help article with the step-by-step instructions on how to get it connected. And then, you'll click connect and boom, there you go. Your units will be in here in PriceLabs. Um, when you initially pull them in, this sync prices toggle will be off, which is by design. We want you to be able to set it up before you go into we don't want anybody panicking thinking that all of a sudden because I've connected to PriceLabs everything is now not working like I thought it would. You leave this off until you've gone through and set up everything so that your pricing is in line with your strategy, and then when you're ready to go, you can turn the sync toggle on and it'll start sending those rates to ResNexus and down onto the channels. Okay. Perfect. So this dashboard is um, basically a dashboard, right? So we've got our listings down the side here, or again, that's kind of a Price Labs language. So you might think of it more as like units. And for example, like this one here, Seaside Multiplex, total units 24. So even though it's got one line here on Price Labs, this is controlling pricing for those 24 multi-units. So for example, if you've got a boutique hotel with 10 rooms, you pull it into PriceLabs, it might come through here as like, your king bedrooms or whatever, and it'll say total units 10. Okay. On You can add tags into PriceLabs. This is kind of more like helping you maybe internally you think of your properties in certain, you know, tags, so to speak, or labels. I've got like luxury, for example. I put a tiny home village, glamping, so you can add tags from here, remove them. The beauty of tags is it just helps you be a little organized. And then later on, if you are pulling reports, like if you have a lot of units and you want to just pull up a report based on the tag, like maybe I want to look at just my luxury units. For my luxury tag, I can filter reports by those tags. So it kind of helps with organization, and then also with creating reports. Um, we already talked about sync prices. You can have groups. We call these customization groups. So we'll get into customizations a little later. But customizations can be set like individually. If you wanted to set each unit up individually, you can. If you've got a handful of units that are all going to be set up the same, you can create a group and you would just set the customizations at a group level, and then all of those listings would just have the same customization that you've set. You can also have account, what we call account customizations, where if, I don't know, maybe you're this will make more sense when we get into the customization part of this demo. But maybe you want to have a discount as the dates get closer, right? Like we call it a last minute discount, and you want it to be different for different groups. You can set that, or if you want it to be the same across all groups, you can set it at the account level. And account just means like all of my listings or units in the account will have this customization. So it's a good if you're managing lots of units, it's a good way to easily customize a lot of listings all at once. And I'll kind of touch on that a little more later. If that was a little confusing, it should make more sense later. But some of these have certain groups, right? I can get an idea of what my minimum, base, max prices are, bedroom sizes, and then I've got metrics over here. I kind of customize these. Up here, these white buttons are where you can customize what you're seeing on this dashboard. So if you don't want to see maximum price, I can just uncheck that box and it'll go away. And if I have certain metrics that I want to see at a glance, I can, I've got a whole bunch I can choose from, not to overwhelm you, right? But if it's something that you are particularly wanting to see, you can set that up and it'll display here. For these occupancy metrics, some of these are color coded. So like this green is I'm right on par with the market or really close to the market over the next 7 days for my occupancy. Yellow is I'm slightly behind. Red is I'm pretty behind, right? And then blue is I'm outperforming the market. I'm gonna check if there are any questions. Does Does manually push price sync cost additional? It does not. So you can sync as many as you want. If you want, we do have an option where you can pay for additional automated syncs, and I think you can have a total of up to three of those a day. I'm pretty sure it's $1 per unit um, extra per month on your bill. Um, yes, we will go through costs at the end, I promise. Um, Yes. Okay. We'll get into that. Okay. So I'm gonna pull up an example, and this is just one of my, I'm calling it the Seaside Multiplex, right? Um, Essentially, when you get started with Price Labs, the important things are the very first things you're going to want to do are set your minimum price and your base price. So your minimum is the price that you don't want Price Labs to go below. It's going to be your floor. Um, and then base price is going to be the starting point for the algorithm. So right now I've got it set at 181. And what I mean by the starting point of the algorithm is if you look at the calendar dates and you hover on the nightly rate, you can see basically this tooltip. It breaks down your pricing. So at the top, right, we've got February 19th, 2025. It's saying low demand for the market. I guess the market's at 20%. Um, and then this is a multi-unit. So on the right, top right, it's saying 1 out of 24 or 4% occupancy for the multi-unit. That's why there's like a little sliver in that pie. As the occupancy fills up, that pie would fill up. But the base price is that 181 number. And then all of these different factors are adjusting or making adjustments on that base price. So essentially, we're lowering it down for seasonality, right? Like it's automatically knowing that this is the low season for the market, so we're going to bring pricing down. It's adding in a little for demand factor, and then if we were just looking at the market signals, the uncustomized price is 127. But then we have some price customizations in, so like a last minute price factor and an occupancy based adjustment that are also impacting the rate. It would go down as low as 78, but since we've got that minimum price set at 99, it's stopping right there. So we won't go below that 99 number unless you specifically tell us to, with like a manual override. Okay. Um, with this, the main point I want you to get here is that 181 number is again that starting point. If my base price is dialed in and it's right, then PriceLabs is a lot easier to use. If I set my base price too high or too low, these calculations are still going to be adjusting it, 31%, 1%, and so forth. So getting that right is important. And we have a couple of tools. So you can, this button here, help me choose a base price, where you can look at things like the market. And you can say, okay, Price Labs, this certain property or this unit is more economy, maybe it's more budget friendly, right? And I want to compare it. It's a two bedroom, which you can see up here. And I want to also include one bedrooms just because it's like looking at this location, this is the Pacific Coast. It's inland a little bit compared to the other properties, so I'm okay including like a smaller bedroom size. Um, and the market's saying, hey, I think it should be 169 if you want to be kind of more budget friendly. Okay. Or I can say, okay, that's nice. I want to choose my own, and I can set something that's, 180 or whatever, right? Or 181. And this is just a tool to help you get that base price dialed in. Okay. Right. And then another great tool, and this should help visualize like how Price Labs works and different inputs and how we make customization changes will impact that. But this neighborhood data chart is showing this future prices chart here is showing your future rates compared with your nearby competitors. In this case, this is like a two bedroom. And so we're looking at other nearby 1 to 3 bedrooms. The black line is the rates that we're sending over from Price Labs, if we were syncing the rates right now. The shaded areas are where your rates fit in with your competitors. On this neighborhood data, this is specifically coming from either Airbnb or Vrbo data, so nearby Airbnb or Vrbo competitors. If you're more of a hotel style setup, we also have hotel data, which is this tab right here, which comes from booking.com. So, um, my property, this strategy, I kind of said it was more of an economy listing, right? I'm fine being a little lower on some of the rates here. These shaded areas, like this 25th to 50th percentile is the gray area on the chart. So I can kind of see, it's the person, the lower percentiles, I guess, if you will, of what the people in the market are asking for their nightly rates. I can see on certain, high demand days like the 4th of July, I'm going higher, right? Like it's spiking higher. Um, and when you have your data pulled in with ResNexus, there are ways you can pull in like historical booking data and your upcoming ADR information. There'll be two check boxes up here where you can check those and it'll add in little lines showing you where you got booked at last year and where your upcoming average daily rates are lining up. Okay. Um, and then you'll notice weekends are kind of automatically getting bumps. They're going to have higher demand, um, and different things like that. So out of the box, this is essentially what Price Labs would be sending out. This is where I can say, all right, my strategy is that rate is going way too high for 4th of July, or maybe it's not going high enough, and I can start noticing those areas, and I can start making some customization changes within Price Labs. I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to point out occupancy, this occupancy chart here as well. There's a lot of good market data in this neighborhood data chart. Even if maybe you're like a glamping resort and you're like, I don't know if my, if Airbnb is the nearby or like true competitors, it still gives you an idea of some travelers coming into the market and what the local travel trends are looking like. So occupancy, I'm gonna hide a few of these real quick, a couple of these lines. This red line is the occupancy in the market as of today looking forward. So it's market occupancy on the books, looking forward. I can see, just certain spikes for different times of the year. I can hover on it and see, the date and the actual number, right? 4th of July is already 36% occupied. I can add last year data and I'll unhide that line now. So the gray line is basically last year's version of this red line. If we were looking at this last year, that's what it's showing. So same time last year versus this year. And I can see certain differences, right? Like this red line for this time frame in March, we're actually outperforming the market versus last year. So the market's, trending up or pacing ahead. I might also want to notice when we might be trending or pacing behind a little bit. The red line's lower than the gray line, and that can help me decide if I want to kind of take action or stay ahead of that, or if since like this time frame still maybe far enough away, maybe it's outside of our normal booking window for that time in June, or my lead time, if you will. Maybe I'll wait on it and not make any changes just yet. Okay. Um, okay. Then I can also add in the final occupancy number for that day last year. So for example, I'll kind of hover around 4th of July since I've been using that as an example. Right now the market's 36.7% occupied. Last year today we were at 34.8, so we're up a little bit. And then the final occupancy on that day last year was 93%. So the chances of you know, most people getting a booking on the 4th of July is pretty good. If I don't have a booking on that day yet, maybe I'm not that worried yet because there's still, you know, almost 60% chance, like that difference, right, between the 93 and 36. There's still a big chunk of opportunity left to get booked. So maybe I hold my rates or those sort of things, right? So it helps you come up with, or helps you use market data to back the decisions that you're going to make. Okay. A couple other things, just real quickly, since we're on the topic of market data, we do show historical market data as well. So occupancy, I'm going to change this just to show summary for last 2 years, so you can kind of see some year-over-year differences. But there's occupancy by month, market booking windows, which is how far in advance people are booking their stays, also called lead time sometimes. Market length of stay, so on average, how long people are staying when they do book their stays, and then your average daily rate or ADR by month. Okay. Um, yeah. Again, the point of this demo is not to go through everything that's available in PriceLabs, but um, we can explore that more another time. I'm trying to kind of see questions as they're coming to. Somebody asked about like a different base price, weekends versus weekdays. With Price Labs, you can set like a base price. You check it here if the pricing is looking right for your year, then yeah, you just need the one base price. We don't do like a different weekend base price per se, but it is taken into account with the algorithm. Usually the weekends will have like a bump on demand, the algorithm is going to be raising those. One thing I'll show, I'm jumping into the customizations now. Um, you do have settings to say like weekend adjustments, for example. Default, the weekend days are Fridays and Saturdays. You can customize those if you feel like you're more of like a, Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of a weekend, like more 3-day weekend sort of things. But you can also set different minimum weekend pricing. Um, so you can say like normally in the background I've got it at 99, but on my weekends I want it to be at least 120. So there's a different minimum. But the weekends, like you don't set a different base price for the weekend just because the algorithm's already accounting for weekends. Um, okay, there's that. Um, and you can set seasonal base prices as well. I'll get into that in a minute. Um, Kaylee, thanks for that question. Aaron's asking about, yeah, like sometimes, like I mentioned, our data set, right? Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com. You might be like in Aaron's case, a campground or something where you feel like those competitors are not really true competitors. Everything in Price Labs is customizable. So if you wanted to like turn off those different factors or whatever, you can. Um, that is right. That's kind of one of the hard parts of kind of um, talking about this. I do have campground customers that use Price Labs and they just use it in a completely different way, right? Than like an Airbnb would, and I get that. A lot of times it's you're setting your minimum, your base, your maximum prices closer, um, or you're kind of setting your own seasonality, which I'll jump into now since that was brought up. But we have this custom seasonal profile area where you can say, you'll add in your seasonal rates. So I'm going to keep it very high level, but I'll just say like high season, right? And you'll enter in those dates, and this can repeat every year on those dates. And maybe during my high season, my minimum is more like 105. Again, this is campground, so just kind of keeping it close. And then maybe um, you can add in base price here, and you can say I want my base price to be about 120, and then my maximum, I don't really want it to go above 150. I'm just making up numbers, right? And then my low season, obviously you can have as many of these as you need, but maybe during my low season, I want it to be obviously a little lower, right? Maybe it's 90, it'll go down as low as 90. I want my base price to be like 100 and my minimum price, or my maximum, sorry, I'll just say 120. And these dates, you'll pick a start and end date and it'll repeat every year on February 1st to March 31st. You might adjust these annually, but for the most part, it's kind of automating that for you. Um, so it'll still bounce around based on some of those market signals. Or if you want to just completely control it here, you can like it might look a little overwhelming, but all of these settings um, are customizable. So if you want to, not have the demand factor spiking those rates up on the weekends like it does, you can lower the demand factor sensitivity. And I'll go through some of the more commonly used customizations now, and then we'll probably wrap up with some portfolio reporting. Um, and just start trying to glide through some of these questions. We'll probably save some of these for the end. Booking.com, is that where it's pulling a record in price? Yes. Okay. So thank you for reminding me about booking.com. Um, I- yeah. So if you're in a situation where you kind of want to see what like the hotel data looks like, I'm gonna jump to that first, and then we'll come back to customizations. Um, Basically, it's like the default. We're just pulling the nearest like 10 hotels from booking.com just based on location. But you can set your own comp set. So if you want to hand pick, it'll have like their name here, or you can also pick from a map. Um, and you can say add to hotel, right? Or add, I guess those are already on it. Um, you can, I want to say like up to 300 if you really wanted. Anyway, so you can hand select those. I can update, and it's gonna basically show me like the best available rate from from booking.com, and it'll kind of show you like these percentages or like the change in price, right, from the last time that the data was pulled, so like the last 24 hours or whatever. Um, and you can see like your listing along the top here. Here's my rates comparing with my competitors. Um, I can also change this to like a chart view, and I I guess I've got it zoomed into 1 month. I can look at the next month, the next 90 days, and I'm that black line, and my hotel competitors are those other colors, right? So when some of the questions are coming through like, hey, can I tell Price Labs to say, hey, I want to follow more closely hotels rather than the Airbnb data, right? You have that full control over Price Labs. And I even recommend this when I'm helping campgrounds set up is like, hey, check if like the hotel weights might make a little more sense for you, or the short-term rental, Airbnb data makes more sense for you. And where you go to do that is this demand factor sensitivity section. When you first set up Price Labs, it's going to ask you if your property type is more of like short-term rental, which again would be more like a home on Airbnb, midterm rentals, typically like 30 plus nights, or multi-units, which is it's got a long list here, but hotels, right? Apart hotels, RV parks, campgrounds. So in order to see what I'm about to show you, it just needs to be on multi-units. You'll turn on demand factor sensitivity and you can change your weights right here. I'm gonna kind of collapse this down a little bit. But you can say, I want to see what it looks like when I am mostly hotel. Um, and I want it to be just my listings from the hotel data tab that I selected. That's what the selected means. I'm going to show you real quick. We have this little tool where this is where my rates are currently. Remember, it was mostly STR data, but now if I click review changes, I can see this blue line would now be if I switched it to mostly hotel. And maybe, this demand factor sensitivity, maybe you feel like that's spiking too high. You can always like play around with these, review the changes, and see the effect here before you actually, save the change. So, um, and maybe it's a balance, right? So it's mostly STR, mostly hotel, fully STR, fully hotel, and then balance, right? Sometimes it's kind of figuring out what works for you. Again, I'd only suggest this if you are one of those setups where it's like a hotel or maybe a more unique offering like campgrounds or something like that. And just see if any of these balances works for you. Um, okay. ResNexus data from before. So Jeremy's asking if we get any ResNexus data from before the connection to PriceLabs. Um, I I get that question a lot, and usually it's in the frame of, I've already set up some things in ResNexus, like the yield mapping or things like that. Like as just PriceLabs just automatically take that and PriceLabsify it. Just made that word up. Um, the data that we're getting from ResNexus is more just like rental information. We're not getting like how your pricing strategy is set up. We would just need to basically recreate it in PriceLabs. Um, okay. Um, let me We'll get into yield management. We call it occupancy-based adjustments, but pretty much the same thing. So let me just go through a few of these and then we'll get into yield management. So that was the weights, right? Hotel, STR, demand factor sensitivity is where you find that. Last minute prices. If you look at any of these customizations, they'll have a little like explainer down here, and this one will say currently applied, and there's a market driven last minute discount of like 27% for the same day, and it reduces gradually out over 15 days. Um, so that is being applied even though this toggle is off. If I want to override that default, I can turn this toggle on and I can set my own strategy. Like flat, for example, is if I do like a 10% discount over the next, we'll just say like 2 weeks, each day over the next 2 weeks is going to see like a 10% discount. It's just literally just tied to the days and then the discount that you put in. Some people are like, I actually want to do a premium last minute. If somebody's going to book last minute, there needs to be a premium. You have the option of raising rates last minute as well. There's also like gradual or no last minute. Gradual, if I did like I'll just do like a 30% discount over 15 days for easy math. It literally divides that percentage over the number of days that you set it to. So 30 divided by 15 is 2. We're going to be adding 2% gradually each day. So 15 days from now would see a 2% discount. 14 days from now would see a 4% discount. So that 2% is added until a same day booking would get like a full 30% discount. Again, with these, we're not going to drop below your minimum. Um, so there'll be that there. Okay. Um, then that's just, one option. Um, Orphan day prices. This is specifically for gaps between two bookings. We call them orphan days. Um, Again, kind of just check. The default is a 20% discount of 2 nights or less. I know a lot of ResNexus folks I've worked with like have just like a 1 night minimum. Like they don't have any um, like 2 night extra nights where you would be worried about gap nights. So you could always come here and say no orphan day adjustment, or maybe you are like, oh, actually, maybe we do want to look at doing some kind of a discount, but maybe not a whole 20%. Maybe on weekdays we'll do 15 and on weekends we'll do 10. And that's going to be for gaps that are just 1 night in length, right? And you can kind of set that up however you want. But um, let's get into occupancy-based adjustments. So this is how it looks in PriceLabs. You you have the ability to set up this yield management specific to a unit. So this occupancy-based adjustment, is looking at just the occupancy of a specific unit over these number of days. So I've got like 0 to 15, so basically the next 2 weeks. And then I'm following these rules. So if it's 10% or less occupied, the other available nights in that 15-day time frame would see a 15% discount or reduction on the rate. Excuse me. Get a quick sip. All right. Um, like these zeros would mean no adjustment, and then if there's a positive or regular number here, it's like guardrails, right? Like if you're booking up too good farther out in the future, we might start bumping up those rates. This is all customizable if you want to change the day range. Like maybe you're like, I don't think about it in 2 week time frames. I think of it in like like 1 week time frames. You can change this to your strategy, right? This can also be downloaded and kind of reworked in Excel. You can save it as a CSV and upload it here if you are one of us Excel people, right? We have a couple of other pre-built options you can kind of look at and play around with if you want. But as far as like somebody's asking about, yield management, I'm pretty sure if you're using the Price Labs connection, and maybe Amy, you can kind of verify this or ask someone for the Q&A part. Um, I think PriceLabs would override whatever you've set up in ResNexus. So if the yield management stuff, you're gonna kind of want to rebuild here, is my understanding, but we can kind of get into that with the Q&A section. Um, so this is like I mentioned, specific to a rentable unit. If you want to yield against like the multi-units, so maybe it's, you got a certain amount of site types that you in a camping environment, right? And you want all of that yield management to yield off all the other sites in that site type. You can do that if you've got like a 20 room hotel and you've got a luxury suite and there are like 5 units in there and you want the yield management to yield off of those 5 units together. We have what we call our portfolio analytics. I'm sorry, portfolio occupancy based adjustments. Um, so I'll show you that here in a second. That's a group level customization. But you have both options. Some people will use both or they'll use one or the other. Where again, it's the difference is you're looking at the occupancy of the one unit and yielding occupancy against itself, or you're looking at the group of units that you specify and you're yielding the occupancy of the group as a whole. And that one's on a daily basis. And that one is found if you go dynamic pricing customizations and then groups. You'd have to have a group set up for it. but you can then set up, um, sorry, portfolio occupancy based adjustments, and this is how it looks. And again, it's customizable, pretty similar to the occupancy based adjustments, but it's looking at the group's occupancy and then every day um, making these adjustments on a daily basis. Okay. Um, Hopefully that helps a little bit with some of the yielding questions. Um, are you okay, Anthony. Yes, Booking.com is the only metric it pulls for hotels. And it would be, yeah, it would be based on Booking.com. So if a lot of your competitors nearby are not on Booking.com or Airbnb or Vrbo, like there still might be some ways of utilizing some of the Price Labs automations to automate some of your rates. But yeah, that's where the data set's coming from. One last thing, and then we'll get into like the Q&A, and I'll talk about pricing too in just a second. But portfolio, sorry, um, I want to show the multi-calendar because what I've been showing so far is using customizations to kind of set up your overall strategy. But of course, you're still going to want to have your own inputs, and like you don't want to just leave everything up to Price Labs and your customization setup. So I'm showing the multi-calendar here. You can do this on the listing calendar where I was previously over here. Like you have the ability to put in manual overrides, which we call date specific overrides. So these little purple bands here, I put some date specific overrides on these. This one I set. Um, well, I'll just kind of show you how you create one. You can click and drag to select multiple dates, and maybe what I want to do is for these dates, I want to set a price to a certain dollar amount, right? So I can type it in here and it will just set it to that number. I can also say, you know what, I want price labs to still change, but maybe it's a little higher and I want to be a little more aggressive. So let's just discount it down 10%. So it'll still kind of dynamically change, but now it'll reduce it 10%. You can also change minimum prices for certain dates, maximum prices for certain dates. A use case here might be like normally I'm doing like $100 night minimum, but it's really low. I'm just trying to get some bookings right now. I can lower my minimum down, to 90 or something here, and the algorithm can still maybe go above it, but I'm willing to go lower than my normal of 100, and I'm willing to drop it down as low as 90. Okay, you can give yourself a little reason for the override. But I just want you to see here that you've got complete control over um, what you set in Price Labs, and then as you're kind of looking at it, once you got your kind of overall strategy set up with those customizations, a lot of your time will probably be spent here just looking at rates and making manual adjustments. And then also a lot of people will use like our portfolio analytics. This is here at the top for managing larger portfolios. I mean, any size portfolios, but larger portfolios as well, or especially pacing reports. You can aggregate this, weekly. I'm looking at the next 6 months, and I can see how I'm pacing on occupancy compared to myself last year. So the solid line is this year, dotted line is last year. I can identify weeks where I'm a little behind, like April, I'm behind on occupancy. Let's see where I'm at with my ADR. Okay, my ADR is lower than where it was last year too. What can I do? Like maybe lowering rates isn't the answer. Can I put out some marketing promotional material stuff for promoting that first week in April to get more eyeballs on it or things like that, right? So, and then I might use what I'm getting here, to then make those decisions, right? Whether I'm changing my rates or, like this April 1st time frame, I could now go to the multi-calendar and I can look at April 1st and I can kind of get an idea, this week, start April 1st through the 8th, are my rates feeling high? Should I lower them a little bit? And so forth. Um, Let me get into the cost. So Let me pull that up here. We charge per unit. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like here in a second. But the first unit starts at 19.99 per month. And then as you add more units, the cost per unit goes down. So we can share, um, something's wrong with this. Let me see. Pricing. Maybe I had an old link saved. Um, I can share this in the chat when it when it loads. But we have a little calculator, so it shows you input how many units you have, and if you have multi-unit setup, I'll show you how to do that. But independent units, if you just type in the number, right? If you've got 15 or whatever, here's what you're looking at total a month, and then per unit per month. If it's more of like a multi-unit setup, you would put in how many total you have. So if it's, I don't know, like a 20 unit hotel, but you have different, I guess like multi-unit tiers, we call them unit types. But maybe there are like five, like, you'll see your cost there. So I'm gonna, I think I'm gonna wrap up what I'm saying with that. And then I think we do have some questions still outstanding, so we can jump into those.
All right, great. Thanks so much, David. Great presentation, great demo. I love how in-depth you went on a lot of that stuff. Really show people the kinds of tools that are at their fingertips with Price Labs, and I think that's really, really great. I love spreading the word of revenue management. Um, all right, so Amy, I think you've been looking at some of the questions too. Do you want to just go ahead and field those, or do you want me to field them to you, kind of
Uh,
top to bottom?
I wanted to just start with a couple that I knew the answer to right away. So, David just went over the pricing with Price Labs, but with ResNexus, it's just a flat $5 just to help us maintain that connection. So you have your Price Labs part, which kind of varies based off of unit. With ResNexus, it's just a flat $5, no matter how many units you have on there. And then the other one that kind of came up was with if you have yield management set up with ResNexus, how does that work with Price Labs? I actually just shot somebody a message. They usually recommend just going ahead and doing that yielding through Price Labs. So maybe turning off yield management inside ResNexus and letting that go ahead and do what it needs to do there on Price Labs.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate too, like if you're just exploring this and not sure if you want to switch over yet, like when you first import your listings, that sync toggle is going to be off. So treat it as like a test environment. You don't need to turn anything off in ResNexus yet, right? But if you are doing your trial, I think I mentioned this, but there's a 30-day trial period with Price Labs, like no credit card or anything required, so like no risk there, but it like use that trial time to experiment with those things and see, what the results would be with Price Labs. Because as you're making those changes, like I'll jump back in here. Um, as you make those changes, you'll just kind of click save and refresh, and the rates here would change and update and pull in any information from ResNexus as well. Like um, for example, if you have bookings that just came in while we were on this call, you can click save and refresh, and then the booking data will appear here on your calendar in Price Labs as well.
All right, that's great. And on that note, we have got a couple people asking about, what they can expect in terms of their return on investment. Do you have any like ballpark or stats or anything off the top of your head for like some success stories of properties and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I totally understand that question. I'd be asking it too. It is like our range, we see like an uplift in revenue anywhere from like 10 to 30%. I know that's like a huge, huge range. But that does come down to like different accommodation styles, right? Might see different percentage increases. And then also just like how how involved you were with your revenue management strategy before versus, now with Price Labs, right? All of those are going to have factors on it, but you can usually start to see those results pretty quickly. And then with that, I'll also add with our pricing, it's your charge for the number of listings or units that have this toggle on. So if you just wanted to test it on a handful first and you didn't want to pay, the whole pricing or whatever, you could only try it on a few after that trial period, right? If you wanted to keep using Price Labs for a handful of your properties or units.
All right, awesome. Let's see. And then kind of again on those same lines, we've got Chris who's asking about specifically how Price Labs can help you increase your occupancy, and I think that gets down to, supply and demand and that kind of thing. Um, so
Yeah.
do you have anything to talk to that, rather than straight up increasing revenue, but the other side of it, right? Increasing that occupancy.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll go hand in hand. I think a lot of the occupancy stuff comes down to like the market signals and just being more reactionary to that. Um, but yeah, we kind of use the metric RevPAR, which is revenue per available rental, which combines both occupancy and an average daily rate as far as if we're like measure as far as measuring performance. But yeah, you should see occupancy increasing. And even just like if you're on OTAs like Airbnb, they reward you usually like you rank higher if you're making adjustments to your rates more regularly. So as long as your rates are competitive with your market, that's another kind of added benefit is you should usually rank higher, and that should help you get more bookings or at least more eyeballs on it. So I know that's kind of a roundabout answer, but you should see increases in that as well.
All right, great. And Amy, did you have a question you wanted to field from these? I'll give you an opportunity to.
Well, the other one was with the yield management. We're not going to sunset it. It will still exist in ResNexus. It will always be something that we offer in ResNexus. So,
Yes, that's absolutely right. All right, let's see. We've got a lot of questions here. This is great. Thanks everyone, by the way, so much for attending. Really appreciate that. I've got a lot of interest in this, so this is fantastic. Let's see. We've got a question again about importing historical data for occupancy and price from ResNexus. Um, Amy, do you know if we have anything on that front for importing data?
based off of what David said, it does sound like when you connect ResNexus to Price Labs, it does pull in that historical data. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, it does. And obviously kind of like double check it between Price Labs and ResNexus. This is a newer integration for us, so if you notice anything not matching, just reach out to us and we can, get that verified or fixed for you. And then I did see there was a question about a discount for ResNexus customers, so thank you for asking that. There is a discount code right here, ResNexus PL15. So when you're signing up for Price Labs, it'll ask if there's like a field for promo code. Um, if you've already signed up and you didn't use this promo code, you can you can reach out to our support team or just start a chat and they can retroactively apply it. But it's 15% off your Price Lab subscription for the your first 3 months, is basically what it comes down to.
All right, that's great. Yeah, thanks for getting that out there. That's awesome. We had one question asking about setting base rates and whether you could change it for seasonality. David, you talked about that after they asked that question, I believe, where you went over the seasonal rates, where you can configure them based on any time frame you want for any, kind of min max and all that stuff. Um, so that's great. Let's see. Um, let's see. And then another question. Again, I think a lot of these you already answered over the course of your demo. But we might as well touch on it again, maybe real quick. Andrea asks about having a separate base rate for weekends versus weekdays, and can you specify that on Price Labs? I think you might have already gone over that.
Um, yeah, it's like I guess yeah, with our base rates, like it's not a different weekday weekend. The algorithm's already accounting for weekend days. You can let me kind of minimize that if needed. So I'll kind of answer this in another question combined, but we have again, I know I could go into lots of details on these things, but we do have what we call like day of week pricing adjustments. So let's just say that you're finding that Price Labs is always going not high enough on your weekdays. You could come in here and say, hey, let's add 5% on for Friday and Saturday, or vice versa. Maybe it's going too high. Um, there are different, I'm going to call them toggles or levers you can pull to make the algorithm, do extra things or less extra things on days or based on demand. So hopefully that helps. There was kind of another question about rates going too high sometimes. Um, if that is the case, like across the board, like I would recommend looking at setting maximum prices, or I'd also recommend looking at somebody asked, can you set seasons in Price Labs? That's this custom seasonal profile area. I'd probably set different minimum, maximum rates for different times of the year here. Um, and that's a potential option. But basically, like, yeah, if the setup is somebody's asking if it's automatic or manual, the setup does involve your input. Think of it like PriceLab started out with like, what you think of when you book a property on Airbnb, right? Like those kind of traditional Airbnb homes, and then it's been expanding into these other accommodation styles. So sometimes if you think of it in that sense, like, oh, like Price Labs kind of thinks of it through this lens, how can I now make adjustments to my strategy? Um, that's where these settings come from, like demand factor sensitivity. If you put this to low or none for somebody who said like the prices are going too high, that's something to try. That just I'll kind of show you here. Like, see these spikes down here? If I set it to low, it's just going to make it less spiky. Maybe it didn't do it enough for you, but you can use some other settings to lower those down as well. Um, and then somebody's asking if you still get the first month free is the first 30 days with the promo code. Yes, you do. So you still get the 30-day free trial, and then the first 3 months after that are discounted with that promo code.
Yeah, definitely a great thing to take advantage of. All right. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to all these questions. I think we'll go for maybe another 8 minutes or so. Is that all right with you, Amy and David?
Sure,
All right.
yeah, there are lots of questions coming in,
Yeah.
so
If we don't get to your question, what's the best way for people to reach out to Price Labs to get kind of support and answers to those?
yeah, great question. Our email, where did my slide? Well, there's that question mark, but that you have to sign up for that. So let's see if we've got it on a slide. We usually have it at the end. Support at pricelabs.co, .co, right? So, um, reach out that way we can get your questions answered. We do have like onboarding specialists and guides to help you as well. Sometimes, be um, persistent's not the right word. Just reach out to support and they'll get you in touch with the right person for your style and your size of portfolio.
Great. And then if you have any questions related to ResNexus or the ResNexus side of the integration, just reach out to your support representative or support@resnexus.com and we'll take care of you. All right, going back through questions again, maybe we'll go through these a little bit quickly. We've got one person, Aaron, who says that it seems like they manage a campground and they don't have a whole lot of local competitors. So how would you recommend they adjust for those kinds of variables where they don't have a lot of local, campgrounds as competition?
Yeah, it's I kind of kind of went over that earlier. It's going to be ultimately up to you, right? I have some customers in like middle of nowhere Texas that they like Price Labs because it's one centralized area where they can easily make adjustments to their rates. They've basically like turned off any market factors and they've toned them down a ton so that they're just mostly controlling those rates. I know a lot of my campground customers just their revenue management kind of processes. They're looking at their competitors' website, seeing kind of what they're charging, and then adjusting their rates accordingly. Price Labs makes that easy to do, and then the reporting capabilities that I kind of went over on like the portfolio analytics to see how you're pacing compared to yourself last year can help with making some decisions and staying on top of that as well. As those are kind of the two main areas where I see folks that maybe don't have competitors or the competitors don't make sense. They're still finding value in Price Labs, but again, ultimately it's up to you. Try out the free trial. Reach out to our support team to get your onboarding specialist to help you with those decisions as well. And if it works out after that, like you're liking it after the free 30-day trial, great. If you're still unsure, like, we can have those conversations.
Yeah.
We're we're not very pushy.
Yeah. No, that's great. There's always data, right?
Yeah.
All right. We've got one question, Amy, about ResNexus yield management. This person says that they want to kind of experiment and send some units to Price Labs and keep some of them self-managed. They just want to confirm that the yield management rules will play nicely, and not interfere with the Price Labs units. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So yeah, if you want to experiment like that, yeah, it's a great way to figure out what's the best strategy for you. Let's see. Any other questions stand out to anyone, or I'm just gonna keep going down through the
Um,
list. You go ahead.
so the one that I was noticing is what is the setup? How long does the setup take time take? Um, on ResNexus, it's as simple as going into settings, direct connect, um, and finding the channel connection for Price Labs and enabling it, and then setting up your unit types. Looking at the setup instructions on Price Lab, it looks pretty seamless there as well. So if I was going to give a ballpark idea, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume that you can be set up in as little as like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, as far as like getting the information in, yes. But as far as like getting Price Lab set up, it's gonna take you some time, right? I'll like if I'm onboarding somebody, we'll usually have like two or three calls that are about 30 to 45 minutes each, kind of spread out over a week or a couple of weeks, and in between you're kind of doing some setup as well. So it's kind of up to everyone's going to be a little different, right? If you've got more units to set up, that might take more time, but it's like do plan on taking some time and putting in some effort. But again, utilize our Price Labs resources, reach out to support to say, hey, do I have can I get help with onboarding? Do I have an onboarding specialist? And we can get that um, ball rolling faster with some help.
All right, Amy, I just saw you put in the discount code in the chat. So yeah, that's great. For anyone who didn't hear about that discount for Price Labs and ResNexus, there's a discount code, and that's now in the chat. So you can go ahead and copy that and use that.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing that.
I forgot to add this link too.
Oh, great. Actually, I think I might have already put it in there for you, but double check.
Oh, yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay. All right. For setup, are people going to want to start by talking to Price Labs or start by talking to ResNexus to get the integration going?
Uh, I think you may or may not need to talk to anybody to get them talking. We've got a help article. Do they need to reach out to you to get their hotel ID? Sometimes I get that question.
So once they go ahead and enable Price Labs in ResNexus, it actually shows the hotel ID on the information page.
Okay.
So
So again, we've got like a help article. You guys might too, but let's see, step one, two, the yeah, three. Like it's a pretty I I've been told it's a pretty easy process to get the connection going from ResNexus users.
All right, and then maybe we have time for one more question. So unless either of you have one that really stands out to you, um, I've got one person who asked about how often should they be kind of reevaluating their price labs, their revenue management settings. What would you recommend as a good frequency for doing a check-in on that?
It's good. Yeah, it's another one of those where it depends, but I think initially when you're first getting started, just as you're getting familiar, like any tool, you're getting familiar with it, you're gonna be in it a little more often, and then as you get more comfortable, I see people doing like weekly checks. It just kind of depends on much your pricing changes, how much your market changes. I definitely see people going in when they feel like bookings are slow or something like that, right? Like, what can I do to make the adjustments? But I think initially you're going to be in there maybe every day, every other day as you're just kind of getting familiar with it because of the newness of it. But then to like properly, maintain it, I see people not looking at it until they feel like something's wrong, which is a very reactionary approach, or people who are just checking every week, just quickly seeing how they're pacing, checking their multi-calendar. It's up to you and your operations.
Gavin, I wanted to answer really one quick question. So there was one in here that talked about if you send over higher rates to the OTAs, would that still be reflected in ResNexus? So what happens is the rates from Price Labs come in as a special rate, and those special rates will push over to the OTAs with that increase that you already have in ResNexus. So if you're increasing your rates by 15%, it's going to be 15% on top of whatever um, Price Labs is has put into ResNexus for your special rate.
Yeah, and real quick, the like this is just your nightly rate, right? So if there's the increase in ResNexus, you want to account for that. If you want to visualize like in a 15% increase, you can, of course, this is taking a minute to load while I'm trying to be quick, but you can add we call it like a markup. You can add a markup. Come on. Here of 15% or whatever, apply that, and it'll add a new line that's going to be, believe it or not, 15% higher than that black line, and you can kind of visualize what the end, the guest is seeing at the end.
All right, great. I think we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close. Any final notes from either of you for anyone looking to get more into the Price Labs and ResNexus integration before we sign off?
No, thanks for having me though. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And once again, thanks for coming on. And thanks to everyone else who came online to get involved and participate. Really appreciate taking the time out of your day. And all right, I'll just go ahead and say, everyone have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
See ya.